Hey, this is Paul with Make Use Of. This is one of the 4 recently released drones by Autel that looks to give DJI's prosumer drones, namely the Air 2S, a run for its money. The Lite Plus shares a very similar design and comparable specs to the Air 2S, as well as the slightly older Mavic Pro 2, and even a few that match or are better than the Mavic 3. And so depending on your needs, the EVO Lite Plus has a very unique feature set that might make it the best choice. With DJI being in some hot water surrounding its privacy and security concerns, Autel's newest drones are coming out at a great time. Over the past few weeks, this drone has received a number of very important firmware updates that have brought advanced camera controls, as well as more customizable settings that allow it to be a more professional tool for video and photo creators. There are still a number of features that are expected to arrive in future updates, as well as a few rumored ones, and I'll comment on those. In this review, I'll share my thoughts using the Autel for the past month in a variety of conditions, testing its photo, video, and quick capture modes. I'll also provide some insight as to how it compares to my experience as a longtime DJI pilot, starting with the Mavic Pro and now operating the Mavic Pro 2. As a quick teaser as to what's ahead, the Autel EVO Lite Plus gets a lot right. Its setup and learning process is quick and simple. If you have experience flying DJI's Mavic drones, it's nearly identical, and you'll be ready to take off with the EVO Lite Plus in no time. The drone flies really smooth, stable, and again, its controls are very familiar. Its 1-inch sensor provides excellent video and photo quality, and it excels in low light. Manual settings were only recently reduced near the tail end of this review, and there are still a number of announced video features that I'm excited to come with future updates. Its app and intelligent video modes are intuitive, but it still has a lot of room to improve and might feel limited to some. The app does lack certain advanced settings, customizations, and tracking, and quick shots are still very hit or miss. The EVO Lite Plus also comes in a non-plus standard version that shares a lot of similarities, basically the same features except for the camera. The EVO Lite standard is $100 cheaper and has a smaller 1/1.28-inch sensor. It's limited to 4K, but it can take larger 50 megapixel stills with optional 12.5 megapixel binning for sharper results. Very unique to the standard, it introduces a 4th axis that lets you shoot vertically. The EVO Lite Plus, on the other hand, sports a larger 1-inch sensor that only takes 20 megapixel stills, but on the plus side, it can shoot 6K video up to 30 frames per second. Because it has fewer megapixels, its zoom is more limited compared to the EVO Lite standard. It has 1.3 times lossless zoom at 4K compared to 2 times with the standard, 3 times lossless at 1080p instead of 4 times. Overall, if you prioritize video quality and low light performance, the EVO Lite Plus is definitely worth the extra $100. When the original DJI Mavic first came out, it was incredible because of all the performance and features that it packed in such a compact design. And about 6 years later, that design has remained largely the same, even with competing models from Autel. Side by side, you can see some of the differences in design as well as characteristics to the DJI Mavic Pro 2. The EVO Lite Plus is slightly larger and heavier compared to the Air 2S, and even slightly larger than the Mavic 3. One of the advantages with Autel's larger design, though, is that it has slightly taller feet, which in turn gives it better ground clearance. This is helpful when taking off or landing on less even, rougher terrain or even wet areas. I frequently find myself landing in different areas than I originally took off from, and the added clearance makes it easier to find a safe and suitable spot to touch down. The Lite Plus is also a significantly heavier drone at 835 grams. Most of this weight comes from its much larger 6,174 milliamp battery compared to the 3,500 milliamp that the Air 2S offers. In addition to longer flight time, the extra weight can also be beneficial with its flight stability, as it has better wind resistance and won't get tossed around as easily. The EVO Lite Plus can be bought in 2 packages, the standard or the premium bundle. The premium is very similar to DJI's Fly More combo. The standard kit includes everything you need to get started, connect the controller to your phone, and of course charge the drone. If you don't plan on flying more than 30 to 40 minutes in a single session, or you don't need the additional accessories offered, the standard kit is probably the way to go. If on the other hand you plan on flying the drone professionally or you want additional flight time beyond the standard 30 to 40 minutes that a single battery offers, I definitely recommend going with the premium bundle. The 2 additional batteries that the premium bundle offers, which retail for $159 separately, are definitely worth the difference. With your 3 batteries, you could easily get close to 2 hours of total flying time, which is very impressive and should be plenty for most users. You'll also get an ND filter set, the multi-charger to charge the 3 batteries, 3 pairs of extra props, 3 vertical stands, and a shoulder bag. The shoulder bag is big enough to fit the drone and the additional premium accessories. It's well made with strong zippers and it has plenty of pockets and padded dividers. Because the EVO Lite Plus shares a lot of similarities compared to the DJI Air 2S, something that's going to be very important to discuss is price. The Lite Plus costs about 30% more. At first, this doesn't look very good for Autel, but there are a few considerations to note. While on paper, again, they both share very similar specs, the Lite Plus is almost 2 years newer, which might suggest that it is supported and will continue to receive updates longer. Both use a 20 megapixel 1-inch CMOS sensor, but the Air 2S is limited by its fixed f2.8 aperture, whereas the EVO Lite Plus has a variable aperture from f2.8 to f11, just like the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 3. This will help you control depth of field, focus, and exposure better, and can help you achieve a more pro look. Another key difference is with low light performance. The Air 2S is already a very capable drone, but the Lite Plus can reach a ridiculous ISO of 48,000 in its dedicated night mode. According to Autel, with their intelligent moonlight algorithm, the EVO Lite Plus can capture crisp, vibrant details at night with low noise, even when the ISO is cranked up high. But probably the biggest and most important difference between the two drones, if you're considering them, is that battery life. I usually try to return and land a drone before it hits 15% charge. With the EVO Lite Plus's max flight time of 40 minutes, this will give you about 35 minutes of real time in the air. The Air 2S, on the other hand, has a max flight time of about 30 minutes, which is closer to about 25 minutes in the air. A 10-minute difference can be huge and might be enough to save you from needing to land, swap out a battery for a new one, in order to get that shot that you want. The initial setup process is very straightforward. After downloading the Autel Sky app, you'll be asked to create your account and log in. To get everything paired, you'll turn the drone on by holding the power button located on the rear of the battery, then connecting your phone to the controller and turning the controller on. Pairing is quick and I've never encountered any issues. My experience taking this off for the very first time was extremely smooth. By default, the app will start you off in beginner mode, which will limit your max speed, distance, and height. I took a few minutes flying in this mode just to become familiar with the controls and make sure everything was good. After becoming comfortable with the controls, I switched out of this. And compared to my Mavic 2 Pro, the controls felt nearly identical, which is to say very good. With their default settings, some might find the controls a little bit spongy, meaning that the drone doesn't immediately accelerate or come to a quick stop when you push on or let off on the sticks. Rather, it's a more gradual increase or decrease in speed, which I prefer. When it comes to taking smooth video, this helps a lot. But of course, if you prefer more responsive controls, you can change these in the settings. Its controller is very similar to that of an Xbox One's. It's very ergonomic and feels very well made. Actually, maybe a little bit more comfortable compared to the Xbox One because of this rubber back grip. It has a good amount of weight and doesn't feel too big in the hands. At the top here is where you mount your phone. It's very reminiscent of the old DJI Phantom drones where you would mount your phone at the top, compared to the newer Mavic series where you actually mount your phone at the bottom, which I do prefer. The other thing that's interesting about these controllers is that you're able to remove the joysticks. However, you don't actually have anywhere on the controller itself to store them. And because I don't have anywhere specific on the controller, I actually leave the joysticks on because I don't want to lose them. Similar to the rest of DJI's newer Mavic drones, you don't have any actual informational systems on the controller itself. You only have your return to home button, your power button, and pause flight button. One of the reasons I actually didn't upgrade to the Mavic 3 is because of the controller. The Mavic 2 Pro has some good information. It has a small screen on the controller itself, which will tell you your flight, your speed, your distance away from the controller, and any errors that might be going on as well. I've run into issues in the past where either the app or the controller will disconnect from the drone, and the only thing that was able to get me safely back home was because of the help that the informational screen provided. And so while this isn't necessarily a con for Autel, I think this is an area where they could have differentiated themselves and stood out as a more pro choice. Unlike with DJI, Autel doesn't have geofencing built in, meaning that it's up to the user to ensure they are flying safely and obeying all local laws. For users unaware, there are numerous restricted areas that either prohibit you from flying near, flying over, or taking off from. This is especially true if you live near a city or an airport. DJI has these provisions regularly updated within the app, which can help keep you flying safely. Autel, on the other hand, places this responsibility on the user end, and you'll need to consult official maps or apps like before you fly during your flight. Also missing is ADS-B, Automatic Dependent Surveillance, which provides pilots with the location of other nearby manned and unmanned aircraft. DJI uses AirSense technology, which immediately notifies the user through the app or controller when another aircraft is nearby, keeping them safe. The EVO Lite Plus includes obstacle avoidance sensors on the front, rear, and bottom of the drone. The Air 2S has it beat here because it has upward sensors which should help prevent you from accidentally ascending into something like a tree branch, awning, or overpass. And the Mavic 3 takes it a step further with having full 360 sensors. Testing out the sensors on the EVO Lite Plus, it did a good job at detecting light poles, mailboxes, branches, and bushes. Unlike DJI, Autel does not currently have any semi-autonomous flight system, and so it will not be able to navigate around certain obstacles while it's tracking a subject. It's possible that this might come with a future firmware update, but we're not sure at this point. Autel Skylink is rated for 12 kilometers or 7.4 miles of range without interference. I flew this a good distance away, nowhere near its max claimed range, but within the limits of what I felt was practical and safe for most real-world flights. Further out, there were a couple times where the signal got a little bit choppy, but it never completely dropped out. Within 0.6 miles or 1 kilometer, its range transmission can provide a live 2.7K stream to your phone, which is sharper than DJI's max 1080p stream. During my flights, I felt very in control of the drone and I never encountered any unexpected or strange issues. Before moving on to the photo and video quality, I have a few more thoughts on the app. Most importantly, it works well, it's reliable, and it's never crashed. but as I was sharing earlier, the app is still receiving new updates and features, and in its current state, it does lack in a few key areas. For the most part, tracking seems to be very hit or miss right now. In standard video modes, it still doesn't seem to be available at all. You have to switch to quick shot modes where you can select the subject you want to focus on, but even there, it struggles. When selecting one of the auto-suggested subjects that it provides on screen, the drone will either fail to initialize the quick shot, where it will then repopulate the screen with a different selection of tracking points, and even when clicking those, it sometimes doesn't work. Or if you are actually able to start a tracking movement, it sometimes fails shortly into it or randomly during it. What's odd though is these subjects aren't actually moving, so it should be very easy for it to track. I tried this with boats, cars, buildings, people, and other large landmarks. From my tests, I was able to get the best result with very large structures like water towers that had minimal other buildings near them and had a high contrast scene. For the time being, this might be just due to an early software development issue, but Autel really needs to get this fixed soon if they want to make this a big selling feature. Something interesting that I found is that when you switch to the quick shot mode, the field of view is actually noticeably more fisheye. My thought is that while shooting in normal video, Autel is doing some auto distortion removal process, and perhaps this is disabled or too resource intensive when it attempts to make more complicated quick shot moves. One of the most important features that the recent firmware update brought was manual controls for photo and video modes. These are now available under a dedicated manual mode. When in manual mode, you can adjust the ISO, shutter speed, and white balance. The Autel Lite Plus loves to tout the 6K camera, but in reality, the max resolution is 5472 by 3076, which is nearly identical to the Air 2S, which has 5472 by 3078. In 6K, according to Autel, or 5.4K, according to DJI, both drones can shoot up to 30 frames per second, in 4K up to 60 frames per second, and in 1080p up to 120 frames per second. The Air 2S does have a slight edge here with a higher 150 megabit per second bitrate compared to 120 on the Autel Lite Plus. Both support H.264 and H.265. 24 frames per second was recently added as well in the last update, and it shows promise for other highly requested features. Autel also claims that in a future update we should see HDR video coming to their 4K and lower resolutions. Photos support 10-bit, while video is currently limited to 8-bit. There are rumors that 10-bit might also be coming to video in a future update, but we're unsure at this point. For videographers, this is a crucial feature, especially if you color grade a lot. Also missing as of now is any kind of equivalent flat picture profile like D-Log on the Mavic Air 2S. At first I was skeptical about using the zoom features on the Autel. 2x looks pretty good without too much noticeable quality loss. 4x is really cool, especially when you want to see something further out that you either can't or shouldn't fly closer to. However, it's very obvious that this is a digital zoom. Don't expect this to replace a telephoto lens. That said, this is still a very cool feature. While looking at it on screen, just flying around, it's very fun. I had one flight over a frozen lake where I could hardly tell what was happening below me. It wasn't until I switched to 4x zoom that I was able to tell that these were two people walking their very energetic dog. For a lot of people, Autel might be brand new to them and they've never considered it when deciding on their next drone. The EVO Lite Plus offers great hardware, photo and video quality, and performance. It's consistently receiving software updates which bring new features and improvements. Similar to its competition though, this drone has released with the promise of many other future updates, which should hopefully make it a stronger contender as a pro creation tool. Price and feature-wise, it sits almost right between the DJI Air 2S and the Mavic 3, which could make it the better choice for some users depending on your needs. If you're looking for a very reliable drone under $1,600 that can take excellent photos and videos, even in low light, and has very good battery life, then the Autel EVO Lite Plus checks all those boxes. And thanks again for checking out this video. Until the next one, we'll catch you later.